I got it right here. Thank you.
Success.
All right. Hey, Julie, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. Debbie, can you hear us okay? Debbie? No?
Yanako, can you hear us?
I'll write something in the chat for her.
Why don't you text her?
Give her a wave. She looks like she's looking.
Uh, All right. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we will get going right now. As soon as I maximize the screen for the 2-1 buy down, and it looks good. So, um, Olivia's on the call as well. So, if you want to just chat, use the chat button and just type in any questions. You can do that, or you can just kind of raise your hand and ask a question as well, and we can go from there. So the 2-1 buy down, what we're using it for today is kind of as a talking point out there on the street. So when you're talking to buyers and they bring up the objection of the interest rates, it's something we can just come right back to them and say, hey, yeah, they're a little higher than the average, 6% over the last 40 years. But we suggest that our buyers use a 2-1 buy down or buy down their interest rate until the rates generally do come back down again. And then there's a possibility of refinancing because the nice thing about buying now is, we all would have loved to buy 2 years ago, with the 5+% appreciation, your house is worth so much more. And, that potentially, if you wait, that potentially is going to be money that you would lose down the road as well. If you end up waiting for the interest rates to come back down, if they come back down. So, and if they don't come back down, then you do want to buy now anyway, because the interest rates will be higher later and have an even higher rate if you end up waiting. So, um,
Are there fees involved in using that two-on buy down program for the buyer?
there are. So, none for the buyer, sorry, but a few slides down the road, we're going to have some examples
Okay.
of what the total cost of the buy down is. And then we'll go through that. And there's a couple different ways to pay for that, which we'll start discussing. So this is what we're going to be talking about. What is the buy down? What's a 2-1 buy down? There's different types of buy downs as well. How the math works on the buy down, when to use it, buyers versus sellers. When we're talking to buyers and talking to sellers, both could actually use the benefit of a buy down. Potentially when you're listing a property and we're talking about price reductions or things like that. And then there's a lender paid buy down that we have some investors that are paying for. And the seller can always pay the buy down as well. So,
Hmm.
so what is a buy down? Lender or seller paid buy down. It's when uh, you pay interest up front on the mortgage, and you buy your interest rate down either permanently or temporarily. So permanently, you all probably would know what that is. So when someone wants to pay points and drop the interest rate down, and you have a lower fixed rate, where you're giving the lender points up front, which is prepaid interest, and in turn, you have the benefit of a lower interest rate down the road. Temporary is what we're talking about here, the 2-1 buy down, where you buy the interest rate down the first year 2%, the second year 1%, and then the third year would be that 30-year fixed rate for the term of the loan. So the permanent again is permanent buy down again is where you pay down the points, and the temporary is the temporary buy down that eventually goes back to that fixed rate. So these slides will kind of go through that, and we'll have the deck available for everyone after that. We can send it out to everyone. And there's different variations of the buy down, the temporary buy down. The fixed rate buy down is it's a one-time deal. You pay the points and you're done. The temporary buy down, there's different options. So Jen always here, and she was just mentioning they just did a 3-2-1 buy down, where it's the interest rates drop down 3% the first year, then 2% the second year, 1% the third year, and then fixed the remaining life of the loan. You could do a 1 year buy down. The 1 year buy down, you would just drop the interest rate down 1% for the first year, and then it would be fixed for every year after that. So the most common is a 2-1 buy down. But even with that 1 year buy down, you don't have to just buy it down 1%. You could buy it down 2%, if that's something that that would help make the transaction move smoother, something that might help the buyer decide to buy. So that's a different option. So let's talk about a little bit about the math on the 2-1 buy down. Do you guys have any questions on kind of what the buy down is to start before we kind of get into the math?
Makes
All right.
sense.
We will jump right into it. Olivia, you'll let me know if there's some chat questions.
Yep, I will.
Awesome. So this scenario is a conventional fixed rate mortgage, sales price of 500,000, loan amounts 20% down. We got an interest rate of 6.5%, which is about what the interest rates are right now. Potentially a little bit higher than that, but pretty close. Your principal and interest payment is 25.29. And let's look at what a 2-1 buy down is. So the first year, your interest rate would be bought down 2%. So the 6.5 would go to 5.5%. And then year 2 would be bought down 1%. So your interest rate would go from 6.5 to 5.5%. That's where the 2 and the 1 come in for the buy downs. So here's kind of the breakdown of everything. So when we do a flyer for you, this is the information you'll have on the flyers. You'll have the first year payment, the second year payment, and then the payment for year 3 and the remaining years. Depending on the buy downs, it could be some different scenarios. So we were just, to kind of give you an example, we were just talking to a seller, builder seller, who was comparing this 2-1 buy down with a permanent buy down. And the 2-year buy down was going to cost them about $16,000. And then we were comparing that with a permanent buy down with throwing $20,000 toward points. And the sales price was in the $750 range. And the permanent buy down, the payment was only about $150 more a month than the 2-year buy down rate on that was. And the difference in there was 2 different price points for him that we were kind of comparing to. So we can do some comparisons for that for the buyer and also the seller, when we're talking about renegotiating with the seller and talking about giving some incentives to buyers. That's something we can look at, seeing what the difference of a permanent buy down. And really it's just seller concessions. So under special provisions or additional provisions on the purchase and sales, you'll just write, if the total was, let's say, $15,000 for the 2-1 buy down, you would just write seller to pay $15,000 to the buyer's 2-1 buy down. And that's it. And it goes, it's not closing costs for prepaids because that's something different. You can have the seller pay that as well. So we just need to keep in mind the total max seller concessions can pay. So here's the number. Here's the breakdown. So year 1, you're looking at 4.5%. So your payment would be $2,027. And if we drop down to the bottom left-hand corner, that's $502 per month less for the buyer. So when you're talking to buyers out there and they bring up that objection of the interest rates being higher than they were even a couple months ago, and certainly a couple of years ago, this is one item you can bring up. Well, on a $400,000 house with a 2-1 buy down, you could save over $500 a month each month for the first year. And this is how we would structure it. So the interest rate's 4.5, $2,027 for your payment. The first year savings is $502 a month, and that's $6,000 a year. Year 2, the interest rate jumps up to 5.5%. That payment's $2,272. So if we subtract that from your 30-year fixed payment of $2,529, you're looking at $257 a month, which is another $3,084 a year for year 2. And then that gives your buyers a total of $9,108. So that would be the cost of the buy down for the seller, $9,108. So that's what you would put under additional provisions. Seller to pay $9,108 to a 2-1 buy down for the buyer at closing. So what's the cost of the seller? We just went over it, 6,000 for the first year, 3,000 for the second year. So the total is a little over 9,000. That's the total savings to the buyers, the total cost to the sellers. So some terms here. The seller can pay the seller would have to pay the whole buy down amount. There's no mix and match. The seller can't pay $5,000 toward a buy down and have it subsidized. So the seller has to pay the whole amount. The buyers do need to qualify for the total fixed payment and fixed interest rate. You can't qualify them at a lower interest rate. The bought down interest rate. They have to qualify at the higher full term fixed interest rate on the principal and interest payments. You can refinance at any time. There's no prepayment penalties. So let's say 6 months or a year down the road, the buyer wants to refinance, the seller paid buy down. Now, because the seller is giving the buyers that money to put toward the buy down, anything left over in that account that hasn't been spent in 2 years gets sent back to the buyer. So that's a nice little
Buyer or seller?
benefit if
A
we're
buyer?
thinking that rates are going to drop down, and in 10 months, you've still got, $7,000 left in that account. That money goes to the buyer when that loan's refinanced.
Spending all that money up front and then it's gone.
If rates come down, paying points was kind of a waste. Exactly. Yep. That's why I
Can you
generally
repeat?
suggest not paying
Yeah,
points.
if you could just reference what questions were asked in the office because we can't hear them.
Yeah. Just repeat what
Yes,
being asked
I
in
will.
person, please.
Sounds good. So Jen just mentioned that 2-1 buy down as opposed to the permanent buy down where the borrower just pays, or the seller just pays, let's say $10,000 or $15,000 or that 9,102 toward points. If we refinance that down the road, then that's money lost to the buyers. Because even though the seller's paying it, it's really negotiated in the sales price, right? So we're adding it to the sales price. The seller looks at their net bottom line, and they're essentially financing that extra amount. So whether it be the 2-1 buy down, the temporary buy down, or the permanent buy down by paying points, this would be a better offer if you're going to refinance within a couple of years. Now, if the lender pays the buy down, so we have a lender that right now is giving some special bonuses, and they're paying the cost of the buy down for a loan amount up to $350,000, then that money, since the lender's paying it, does not go to the buyer. It's not money that's going to be thrown into escrow account. That lender is setting that up, and they're funding that themselves. So that if they refinance within 2 years, they don't see any of that refund back. So keep that in mind. The max contribution, we just need to keep in mind that the max seller concessions for a conventional loan. It depends on the down payment. That's why we have the 3 to 9% there. 5% down, it's capped at 3%. 20% down or more, it's capped at 9%. 10% down, it's 6%. So depending on the down payment, and the type of loan it is, you could do a buy down on a VA loan, FHA loans. Just keep those seller concessions in mind.
They are considered concessions when they do go for that one.
Depending on the type of loan, it may or may not. So we can figure that out on the loans. Yep. So why use the 2-1 buy down for buyers? Of course, you're gonna have them save that, saving the monthly payment by saving that interest with the lower interest rate. It's a benefit when you're talking to them. It's a good selling point to buyers. And you can add that to your offer, where you can offer a slightly higher price, have the seller pay the 2-1 buy down, and as opposed to a lower price without that money up front. But mostly it's if the buyers have questions about that interest rate and they're maybe hesitant in buying right now. This is a great conversation to have with them. And not like you're going to have to go in and run all the numbers for them, because that's what we're here for. But if you can have some good scripts on mentioning a buy down and having a lower payment the first year or two, then it might overcome that objection for them. The sellers, so instead of a price reduction, we could offer a 2-1 buy down, which might incentivize more buyers to come in. Maybe market some special financing. that's just on this property that the seller can offer. So that might be some good options for the seller. And again, we can go over with your seller the options, or with you, and you could talk to the seller about some options about that permanent buy down as well. So this just talks about this one particular lender that has the 2-1 buy down right now, where they'll pay for the 2-1 buy down up to a loan amount of 350,000. The borrower's income has to be at 80% of the area median income. It's basically the Home Possible, Home Ready guidelines. And again, with those properties, we can advertise as a lender paid buy down, not a seller paid buy down. So it'll save your seller. So there are more restrictions with the lender paid buy down. But if they fall within those guidelines, and we have 2 borrowers right now that we have going with the lender paid buy down, it's a great program for them. This lender actually also has a 2% payment toward your down payment instead of a 2-1 buy down. So you can kind of meet the same qualifications if you do it. Yep. So that's a 3% down program. They'll pay 2%. So you only come in with 1% plus the closing costs on that. So Jen was just asking if that was that program we were talking about with the 1% of their own funds. And that's what we're talking about. It's still 350. And then you just need to meet those same guidelines as well. So it's basically the same guidelines. They don't care if they put it toward the 2-1 buy down or 2% toward the down payment, whatever the buyer prefers. You can't mix and match, so you can only have it you can only use one of the 2 options.
Property itself, if it was like a fixer upper type thing, would that be an issue?
So
Like the 2% down payment.
Yeah, it's not combined with the FHA 203K, so you wouldn't be able to do that. So it would have to be probably conform to like a conventional. You're going to go with conventional guideline. Exactly. Yeah. Conventional. It'll be a conventional appraisal. So it would have to pass a conventional appraisal. So, any other questions? What do you guys think of the 2-1 buy down? Is this something you can comfortably kind of at least bring up to buyers and just say, hey, you can talk more about this to my mortgage guy, but we've got some special programs where you can go in with your interest rate for the first year 2% below market rate. So instead of rates in the 6s, looking at rates in the 4s, would you buy something if you have an interest rate in the 4s for the first year? See what they say and start the conversation there. And then if they're interested in that, we can give them a breakdown, email it over to you and to them, and they can kind of go over it. We can explain it to them and get them pre-approved and off and running.
And for sellers as well, right, David?
Hold on 1 second. What was that?
I was going to say, we have to be careful how much we get into the details of it because we're not lenders. So
Yeah, I mean, you could easily do the math, but you could calculate the payment and just see what the rate is or the payment is at 6.75 and see what it is at 4.75. You say, hey, the first year it's going to be, $428 a month less, but we can have our lender talk to you more about it. You can put a whole scenario together for you and go from there. Yep. What was that, Olivia?
Just going to say it's really good for listings as well, right?
What's that pitch sound like when you're talking about accepting an offer with this to the seller?
Yeah. So when you're talking to the seller about this, you would just treat it like seller concessions. So it would be the same as the wording under additional provisions that says seller to pay $10,000 toward the buyer's closing costs and prepaids. It'll just be worded seller to pay $10,000 toward the buyer's 2-1 buy down. So you'll net that from the seller's gross price, along with their transfer stamps, and if they're looking for a bottom line. And you can compare that with other offers at different price points and different seller concessions, no concessions, or however you want to compare. So you would treat it the same way.
And when you make that offer, we can calculate the exact amount they need for the buy down. Just let us know.
So when you're working with your buyer to do this, before you write up the offer, you would give us a call and say, hey, Olivia, we're looking to offer, $450,000 on this property. They're going to put 5% down. Can you tell me what a 2-1 buy down cost is going to be so I can write it up under additional provisions?
Okay,
We'll get that
perfect.
figure for you, and you just have that one liner in there to pay for it. Yeah, and we would do the same things if you're talking to a seller and they're saying, "Hey, let's drop the price 20,000." You could certainly drop the price 20,000, or you could say, "Hey, maybe we could work on a 2-1 buy down. Let me talk to my lender, see what the cost of the 2-1 buy down is, maybe see what the cost of paying $10,000 toward points is going to be, and maybe we can generate some interest in the property and have it cost you 10,000 instead of 20,000. Maybe we give that a shot for 2 weeks, see how it goes. And if we don't get any takers, then we can drop the price down that 20,000 and take this off the table, or do a combination of the two: sales price, drop it 10,000, and offer that 2-1 buy down if the cost is about 10,000. Yep. Any other questions? Okay, cool.
Do you have a success with this with other agents? Like, are people really starting to use this? I would think if we created enough urgency, like
Right.
with
We've
buyers, that
we've used it a lot with buyers. So like I said, we have 2 lender paid going right now with buyers, and we talk to buyers. When we talk to buyers up front, we try to mention this so that down the road, their interest rates are changing all over the place. So, we give that to them as an option. And some of them really like that lower payment, that scenario. What was it, $502 a month lower a month? And if the seller is going to pay it, then they know that that's potentially going to be some money back if they refinance within a couple of years, which, odds are they probably will. So yeah, exactly. So and they know that, we say essentially you're going to be adding it to your sales price, which is going to increase your loan amount. But another 10,000 in their loan amount, it's only about $65 a month, where they're going to be saving 502. That's the net is 450, give or take. So yeah, I would say more for buyers, because a lot of sellers might not understand it, and it might be harder to explain to them after the fact. But certainly if you're working with buyers in this environment, with this rate environment, it's a great tool to have in your back pocket.
Is this for any property like multifamilies, condos, single family homes?
Hold on one second, Julie. Go ahead, Jen.
Multifamily like that, or exactly single family.
Yeah, that lender paid has to meet the home possible home ready guidelines. So you can do a 2-unit, a 1-2 unit. The seller paid, you can do that on just about any property. Yeah.
David, can you just
Go ahead.
repeat Jen's question first?
Yeah, she asked what type of properties you could do it on. Multifamily, different properties. So sorry. And was there another question? Julie, do you have a question?
No, that was exactly my question.
Okay, great. And was Debbie ever back on track?
Yes, you can hear now.
Okay. All right, perfect. All right, you got it. See you. So are you guys going to the brews and news? Cool. We'll head into that. Awesome. I'll also be doing a seminar or a Zoom webinar on 4 ways you can have the buyer pay for the buyer's commission. Because I've been talking to a lot of realtors, and that seems like when the seller doesn't pay it and the buyers don't have the money to pay it, then I've heard a lot where they say, well, then we just won't show you those properties. But there are some definite ways we can take care of that for your buyer, so you can still show them any property out there. So we're going to do a little webinar on that as well. So that'd be a good one too.
And then also overcoming low appraisals is on Friday as well.
Overcoming low appraisals is on Friday. And that's actually a really good webinar. Every time I talk to agents about that,
Is that online or in person?
It'll be both.
It'll be both.
What
I'll
time?
do it here, and then I'll have it online as a Zoom call too. And these Zoom calls are being recorded too. So I'm going to send these out to everyone, and they can listen to them and if they're interested in it. But that lower appraisal, overcoming low appraisals and giving you some options, the buyer some options, there's some really good information in that every time I give it, people are like, I can't believe we can do it this way.
What
and
time
not
is
have
that
to
one on
It's
Friday?
at
Is that at
2 p.m. on Friday.
2 p.m.? Okay, thank you.
But that's definitely something that you should know and be talking to your buyers ahead of time, especially when you're writing up the appraisal gap contingency on your offer. Because buyers are like, oh, I got to come in with 30 grand. If it comes in 30 grand lower, no, it could be as little as, $2,500 extra to cover that gap. And we can show you how to do that. So,
Yeah, that's good.
yeah. So, all right. Any other
Awesome.
questions?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And if
great.
anyone needs
Thanks for coming.
marketing materials for it, you can also just reach out to David or I. We can get those to you.
So
Awesome.
if you need marketing materials. So for sure. We've been sending a lot of those out lately.